The Midnight Curse. 1. The Mysterious Call. Min is a senior journalism student, always eager to find mysterious stories to write. One night, while preparing to sleep, he received a strange call from an unknown number. Don't go out at midnight. Otherwise, you will never come back. A hoarse voice rang out and the call was cut off. Min frowned. Who would play this prank? He thought for a moment and decided to ignore it. But that night, he could not sleep. Strange sounds came from outside the window of his rented room. Light footsteps, whispers as if someone was gossiping about him. When he looked through the gap in the curtains, Min was stunned. Outside, under the yellow light, there was a figure standing motionless, looking straight at his window. That person's face was hidden by long, disheveled hair. Then suddenly, the figure disappeared. 2. Strange events. The next morning, Min told this story to Lon, his best friend. Lon was very superstitious, and her face immediately turned pale. Do you know the legend about the Midnight Curse? Those who receive that call and do not listen will disappear forever. Min laughed. Are you kidding? This is probably just a scare tactic. But in the following days, things became even stranger. Min's computer turned on by itself in the middle of the night, and a red line appeared on the screen, "Don't go out." He felt like he was being followed. Every time he went out, Min always saw someone quickly pass by in his line of sight, but when he turned back, there was no one. On the evening of the third day, he received another text message from an unknown number. Today is your last chance. Don't go out. But Min was fed up with these scare tactics. He decided to test the curse. 3. The fateful midnight. At exactly 12 midnight, Min opened the door and stepped out into the street. The air was cold. The streets were eerily quiet. Suddenly, the street lights flickered and went out. Everything was plunged into darkness. Then Min heard footsteps behind him. He turned around, no one was there. Min's heart pounding, he quickened his pace. But the footsteps kept coming, getting closer and closer. He started running, but no matter how fast he ran, the sound followed him. Until Min tripped. He looked up and saw a pair of bare feet standing right in front of him. A woman with long hair covering her face was looking down at him. A hoarse voice rang out. I warned you. Min screamed. Suddenly, everything went dark. 4. Disappeared. The next morning, Lon received a strange text message from Min, don't look for me. But when she arrived at Min's room, it was empty. No one knew where Min had gone. His phone was left on the table, the screen still displaying the familiar red text. Don't go out. From then on, Min never appeared again. But occasionally, in the middle of the night, if someone received a strange call, the caller would whisper. Don't go out at midnight, otherwise, you will never come back. Many weeks ago, and I still remember the first time I walked into the hallway, which was empty except for a tall mirror on the right. It was so big it took up most of the wall. The realtor never mentioned it and I barely noticed it when we signed the lease, but everything about my life here has changed because of that mirror. I'm telling you this now because I need to get it off my chest. I feel like my mind is bending under the weight of what I've seen. I can't sleep well and I'm constantly looking over my shoulder even when I'm in the shower. I swear I hear something moving in the hallway. I'm always stressed. I work a normal job at a small marketing firm. My life is simple. I come home around 600, have dinner, watch TV and go to bed. I usually ignore any weirdness. The old buildings have creaky floors, the lights flicker, strange smells, but everything is normal in older places. But on my second day here I noticed something. There was something unusual about that mirror. When I said it was big, I mean it was almost 7 foot tall and about 3 feet wide. The frame was dark, probably mahogany with some chipped carvings in a few places. At first I didn't really check it, I just walked past it when I went in or out, but I started to see strange spots on the surface. At first it looked like water marks or stains, so I tried wiping them off. One evening I got some glass cleaner and wiped it really hard. The cloth got dirty. But the spots never completely disappeared. they were almost like faint outlines, but I don't know if I was imagining it. A few days later, after a long day at work, I went to take a shower. I remember the shower water was a bit warm because the building's boiler couldn't handle it all. The tenants were using the hot water at the same time anyway. I came out feeling cold and uncomfortable when I walked into the hallway. I glanced at the mirror, my reflection was blurry because I was still dripping, then I saw these shapes in the corner of the mirror. At first I thought it was mist or steam from the bathroom, but the silhouettes were too obvious to be random. They looked like the outline of shoulders and heads, but only at the bottom corners of the glass. I stood there confused, wrapped in a towel. I leaned in and touched the surface of the mirror. It wasn't hot and there was no obvious steam on it. I wiped my hand across the bottom corner and for a second I thought I felt something move, but it was probably just my hand sliding on the slippery surface. The silhouettes disappeared when I touched the glass, so I thought I was just paranoid or seeing some reflection from the hallway lights. I brushed it off. That night I lay in bed thinking about the silhouettes. I tried to push it aside, telling myself it was a weird optical illusion, but the next morning I walked past the mirror before work. I saw the faint smudges again at the very same place. I didn't have time to play with it, so I just rushed out the door running late. For the next few days, I kept catching glimpses of those shapes in the mirror when I wasn't looking directly at it. Felt like something was moving inside the reflection, but whenever I turned my head it was just me or my hallway. I started to feel uneasy around that area. I walked around it quickly, barely glancing at it. One evening I decided I had to do something. I took a blanket and covered the mirror so I wouldn't have to see those stains. I told myself it was only temporary. Maybe the stains were a trick of the light and I needed a break from it. It made me feel better for a short while, but when I was cooking dinner that night I kept getting that weird feeling. It was like the hallway was alive somehow. I craned my neck expecting to see something pop out, but the hallway was empty except for that covered mirror. When I tried to sleep that night I heard a light tapping sound coming from the hallway. It was very faint, so at first I thought it was just the building was settling down, but it kept happening about every 5 minutes, like someone was tapping their fingers on the wooden surface. Tap, 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 then silence. I got up, turned on the hallway light and checked around. Nothing unusual. The blanket was still over the mirror. I stood there for a while, breathing heavy, and then I realized I was sweating even though the apartment was cool. I went back to bed telling myself it was all in my head. The next morning I decided to open the mirror. For some reason I felt the blanket made things worse, as if it was stimulating whatever strange energy was in the apartment. When I pulled the blanket off I noticed the stains had spread. They looked darker and bigger, almost like smudged handprints, but longer. I felt my chest tighten. No kids or guests around, so it didn't make sense. My own hand definitely didn't leave such a mark. I turned away, swallowing hard.